All right, welcome back. Let's bring in our panel right now. With us today, we have former state party chair for the Indiana Democrats, Robin Winston, 2016 Indiana Trump campaign vice chair, Tony Samuel, and two former state lawmakers for the Democrats, Terry Austin, and Republican Mike Murphy. So, Terry, let's start with this executive order we mentioned off the top on the Department of Education. You've worked as an educator. What's your reaction to this news and the impact that it could have here and across the country?
Well, let's start with dollars and cents. Indiana gets $1.8 billion from the federal government through the Department of Education here locally. My question is, are we going to get all that money? The second thing is the Division of Family Resources, which helps do the preschool program and everything, gets $2 billion. So we need to find out, are we going to get all that money? Is it going to be filtered away or frittered away? And it's going to put special ed kids in particular and their families at risk.
Mike, broadly speaking, there's been a lot of pushback this week on the administration's approach, not just on this issue, eliminating congressionally funded jobs or agencies, but also how they've been reacting to different rulings from the courts here in recent weeks as well.
Well, as you know, over the weekend, a federal judge ordered Trump not to send these gang members back to El Salvador without due process. They ignored it. His border thug, Homan, and his Vanna White, Levitt, both said that a federal ruling has no legal status. And so what are we left with? If the Congress is not operable anymore. So if the Supreme Court does not stand up to Trump, we no longer have a republic.
Tony, your response to that, shouldn't the courts have the final say, really, or Congress, when it comes to things like funding that are constitutionally under their direction, under their purview?
The president is arguing that this is under his purview. I think he's right. They'll battle it out in the courts. This goes back to the Enemies Invasion Act, I think it's called, and they're using that to get these gang members, dangerous criminals, murderers, rapists out of the country. They've also made the first arrest, ICE did in Florida on Friday, of a gang member using this Alien Invasion Act.
You think the administration ultimately will abide by what the courts decide?
Well, you can always appeal. This is a district court. There's several of those. You'll appeal it up. You'll fight it out in the courts. It might reach the Supreme Court. The administration is doing the right thing to get these folks that are here illegally, gang members, not just like common folks, but bad people, out of the country. That's where the public comes in. The public supports this. Trump's approval is hovering around 50%, higher than ever, and people want to see action. He's taken a lot of actions in the last 2 months. The public is behind this.
Robin, your response to all that, and what should your party's approach be right now in a time where Democrats have been divided a bit nationally, maybe at the state level too, on how to move forward right now?
Well, first off, nobody's going to argue that criminals shouldn't be deported if they are part of illegal aliens and everything else as people in their party define them. We also, though, took the oath of office, at least I thought he did, on the Constitution of the United States. And I think to uphold the Constitution of the United States. If you're going to do that, you have to respect that. George Bush did that even after 9/11. We did the civil things that you're supposed to do. As it relates to our party, let's just see what goes on. Dan, $27 million was lost this week to the state of Indiana for school lunch programs of fresh vegetables and fruits and things coming from Indiana farmers going to food banks to benefit kids. That's gone. Funding for EV charging stations, gone. Funding for City of Evansville, $20 million, gone. The impacts are now beginning to come home, and I think people are going to see that impact.
Terry, we saw that interview with your new state party chair. She no doubt has a tough job ahead, even just bringing her party together after what turned out to be a fairly contentious process to elect a new chair. But as Chairman Tallien pointed out, Republicans, in her words, have their issues too right now, perhaps two parties in two different ways divided over some key issues right now.
Well, I think you will find that the Democrats believe in the rule of law, and we believe in the Constitution. And it may not always go in a straight line, but the truth is, some of the folks that are actually being swept up are people who have legal status or who have green cards. And that's going to be a real problem. Their families are worried about what's going on, and they can't have any contact with them. As far as the Democratic Party at the state level and Karen Tallien, She's one of the smartest women I know, and she worked incredibly well with a wide variety of people and personalities at the State House. Do not underestimate her.
Mike, this week at the State House, Governor Braun joining that rally Monday, protesting lawmakers in his own party on this issue of property taxes, which we'll continue to see how it plays out before the final bill presents itself in its final form.
Well, a lot of political theater. They all have to show how tough they are, right? Houston, Bray, Braun. Eventually, when it comes down to it, they're going to have to agree on something. One thing Braun maybe has not learned yet, or does not remember from his days as a legislator, is that all they have to do to override any veto he does
Simple majority.
is win by one vote.
That's right. Tony, we saw that interview with the Lieutenant Governor Micah Beckwith. He said he felt property tax cuts could help farmers deal with the impact of the president's tariffs, which he did acknowledge could bring some short-term pain to Indiana farmers. Do you agree?
I agree completely with the fact that we need to bring down property taxes. It's hurting farmers. Governor Braun and Lieutenant Governor Beckwith have been saying that during the campaign. They've been pushing hard for it now. I think the good thing is everybody, whether it's House, Senate, governors, and governor and lieutenant governor, they're all talking about the right issue. What you saw at that rally was the support from the general public. Something's going to get done. I think it'll lean closer to what Braun and the House does. As far as the tariffs go, in 2018 and 2019, when there were tariffs against China and farmers were hurt with their income, President Trump then found a way to find funding to make them whole, and that might happen again. We might see that, or at least in the long run, they'll pay off.
We'll see what happens. Robin, you get the final word here quickly. What's your view on all this and on the Lieutenant Governor's comments?
Well, first off, some of the farmers you're talking about, Tony, are still waiting for reimbursement from the federal government. Programs are being destroyed, taken away that were supposed to do that for them. That's not happening. As far as kind of theater, Mike was right. These people have been in the General Assembly. You had people downstairs holding up placards, a Republican governor, lieutenant governor, lobbying the Republicans on the second or third floor of the building to vote for their package. Something's wrong whenever there's 569 cities and towns in this state that are worried about what their future is, 297 school districts that are worried also.
And we've seen, some of the mayors across Indiana testifying against some aspects of the bill. All right, coming up next, we also saw this at the State House this week, a musical flash mob to fight for funding and keep the music going in Indiana schools. That's next.